through quickly what you are going to learn. Tonight, you are going to learn during this webcast the vital importance of men in saving lives and helping women recover from the trauma of abortion, the profound danger of how fatherlessness leads to abortion and exactly what can be done to fix it, the latest groundbreaking ministries changing the world by reaching men about abortion, the astounding research that shows exactly why fathers are important, more important than anyone can imagine, the devastating implications of sexual trauma and abortion on the fatherhood factor in families, the staggering impact of abortion recovery for men to find hope, healing, and forgiveness, and how you can help call men to godly action to protect and defend women and children from abortion. And I didn't say my name at first, but I'm Sarah Davenport Smith, and I will be your MC tonight. I would love to introduce to you now our Executive Director, Esther Ripplinger.
Welcome, everyone, to our second online webcast. We are so delighted that you could join us today. You know, Washington State was the first state to legalize abortion by a vote of the people before Roe v. Wade. And I believe that what started here is going to end here in Jesus' name. You know, there is a tsunami of healing happening around Washington State, and you're part of it. I'm so excited tonight about the content that we're delivering to you and what we hope to over time with your support. God bless everyone, and I am so excited that you can join us.
Thank you, Esther. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our first guest for tonight, Dr. David Reardon. And he's going to be talking with us about a lot of the research that covers this very topic. Dr. Reardon is the director of the Elliott Institute. He's a biomedical ethicist and internationally known author, speaker, and researcher on the after effects of abortion, and a leader in efforts to promote post-abortion healing programs. His studies show elevated rates of suicide, psychiatric hospitalization, substance abuse, and other health problems associated with abortion. These have all been published in the British Medical Journal, the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and other leading medical journals. Dr. Reardon is the author of 5 books, including The Jericho Plan, Breaking Down the Walls Which Prevent Post-Abortion Healing, a guide for churches and other ministries on how to create a more healing environment for women and men who are hurting because of a past abortion. Welcome, Dr. Reardon.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and be invited to participate in this. So I'm going to just give you a few minutes talking about the experience of men in abortion, which, as you can imagine, is across the board very different for different individuals, different circumstances, just as it is for women. I'll begin with a little poem, I suppose you could say, that a man sent to me after his abortion. He wrote, "I wasn't in the room. I wasn't even in the clinic that day. But in my mind, I've been there a million times since. I've been there watching, breaking, wanting to rescue you. In my mind, I need to be a hero, not a killer, the man who didn't flee. But I'm not. I am the man I fear to see." So for this man, he went along with the abortion decision of his girlfriend at the time, perhaps encouraged it subtly, but it was a violation of what was really in his heart, and it came back and continues to haunt him. And he found that he had clay feet. He wasn't the man he wanted to be. Here's another alternative of a man who wanted to keep and raise the child, but the woman decided to have the abortion anyway. And he wrote, "So now I'm torn. Do I drive her to have the abortion like she wants me to do? Or do I leave her on her own? I want to support her as a human going through something awful alone, but I cannot support the act of killing my own unborn child." And that emphasizes the moral conflict that a man faces in a situation where he opposes an abortion, but his loved one is insisting to go through with it for whatever reason. And how do you still show love, yet also refuse to participate in the killing of your own child. It's a very difficult thing and something that will continue to haunt him no matter how he resolved that situation. Now, in interviews of 1,000 men, one researcher found that the majority of the men who would talk about the past abortion expressed negative feelings about it. Majority also expressed guilt. On the other hand, it's also something that men are less likely to talk about with their loved ones, with other men. It's not something that's easily discussed. Common reactions include feelings of guilt, loss, helplessness, being disempowered, substance abuse, sexual dysfunction, and self-destructive behaviors, including suicidal behavior. There are a number of cases where there are suicide notes specific to the abortion. One young man committed suicide outside the Planned Parenthood clinic where his child was aborted. In 2011, an Australian researcher found that young men whose partners aborted were twice as likely to use substances, alcohol, or illegal drugs, and to suffer depression compared to those who had not had such an experience. A predominant theme that comes up in interviews with men is a profound sense of loss and relationship problems, helplessness, impacted, disenfranchised grief. Now, that's grief that is difficult to cope with. A normal grief process, a loved one dies, you go to a funeral, everybody shares in that grief. The case of an abortion, there's no one to share that grief with. And so it's disenfranchised. It's not part of the communal grief. It's something someone has to deal with them by themselves, and therefore feels more isolated by. In most cases, the relationships after abortion end, and men in this one set of interviews, the men unanimously identified the abortion experience as one of the contributing causes to the relationship failure. Now, that's not always true. In some cases, especially if a couple is already engaged or heading towards marriage and they have an abortion because they figure it's just bad timing, they may actually, because of that sacrifice of the abortion, they may feel more bound to the relationship. That, well, we gave up this for this relationship, so I guess we have to stay in. But there's also underlying resentments and lack of communication, mostly, often a failure to grieve together. And so the relationships can be very strained and hostile, yet we have case studies where people continue in that destructive relationship because they feel bound by their guilt and their loss, and it's not healing. Now, the good news is that couples like that who go through post-abortion healing programs together, when they grieve together, when they share their losses together instead of being a silent, hidden thing, can actually be very restorative of relationships, and people have profoundly enhanced relationships when they work through grief together. That also is important for if the man and woman weren't both involved, but one of them had been through a past abortion prior relationship. Again, going through a post-abortion healing program together, even though they both didn't share the same loss, being able to have the other person hear your loss, respect that loss, share support can be very, very healing. And so I'm a strong advocate for couples who have any abortion loss to go through post-abortion healing programs together. How much time do I have? I know I want to keep.
You're good. Keep going.
Okay. I'll keep going a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. Now, there's different kinds of roles that men may play in abortion. There's basically about 6 different types of experiences for men. One is they were not informed of the pregnancy. They did not know about the abortion until after the fact. Obviously, they feel disempowered by that and caught off guard and whipsawed, and how do they process emotions? But that's very different. They weren't involved at all. At the extreme other end, you have men who pressured or coerced for the abortion, and may have been even brutal in their coercion, verbal, even physical coercion to pressure women into having an abortion. Some of these men, of course, if they have strong coping mechanisms and denial, they're so wounded spiritually, they never think about it and may not impact them. Other men realize what CADs and how bad they behaved, and of course that adds to their sense of guilt for the way they treated her in their effort to avoid becoming a father. A third type is where there is a mutual agreement. They talk with the woman and they mutually decide to have the abortion. That seems to be fairly common. A subset of that would be where men have negative feelings about abortion, but they're trying to be sensitive to what she wants, and so they're listening to her. And if they hear that she's thinking she wants to have abortion, they'll hide their own feelings of loss and try to go along with her because they're trying to please her. And so they then may suffer loss and guilt and other things afterwards, which then are hard to talk about without it turning into blame. A fifth category is the men who want the child. They oppose the abortion. They tell the woman, I want to have the child, and argue for having the child, but she decides to go ahead despite their objections. And the example I gave before would fit into that category. The sixth category would be a man who is basically trying to avoid responsibility. Now, he again may be kind of deferring to her, but he's trying to avoid taking any moral responsibility. He wants her to take all the moral blame for the decision. And so basically he's trying to weasel out of it. In some cases, he may just abandon her. I mean, he may just stop calling. He just flees because he just can't handle it and doesn't want to be part of the decision. Of course, that's another thing. Now, kind of it's in that context, it's important to note that the most important thing that a man can do and should do in these cases is reassure the woman that he wants the child, that he will take care of her, that he's committed to doing anything he can for the child. And in the absence of hearing those words, many women will interpret well, what do you want to do? As, I'm not really here, but if you insist on having the baby, maybe I'm here for. So she hears it as not support. So anything less than full blown, I'm here for you, and I want to have the child, can be interpreted as, oh, he's not really into it. And, they're, rightly afraid to bring a child into the world if they're not going to have the support of the child's father. So anyway, ironically, and the good example of this was a book written by Linda Bird Franke way back when, where she interviewed women and men at the abortion clinic. And she had interviewed the woman before she went into the abortion. And the woman said, well, I would have wanted to have this baby, but Jerry wasn't, that enthused about it. So she's in having her abortion and she interviews Jerry and he says, oh, I really wanted to have this baby, but, Sue wasn't ready for it. So they never actually communicated their true feelings and had the abortion in deference to, well, I don't think the other person's as committed to this as I would be. Oh, so that's the, very sad situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing with us the science behind what we see, what we feel, what we've experienced in these situations where men and women go through the abortion. And I'm really appreciative how you're bringing us up to date with the science that shows that, yes, it's not just a woman's choice. That's kind of been the lie that we've been told in society for decades now, that, no, it's only up to you. But to know that really that it is so important that the father, that the man in that woman's life really steps up and says, no, I will be there for you. Thank you for showing us that, Dr. Reardon. I really appreciate it. And please visit Dr. Reardon's website, afterabortion.org, and you can learn a lot more. Now it is my privilege to bring on Ron Hauenstein. Ron Hauenstein is credited as the founder of the Spokane Fatherhood Initiative. He's a local Washingtonian. His passion for the fatherless was birthed in his experience as a volunteer. Since 2008 at the Union Gospel Mission's Crisis Shelter for Women and Children, as Ron ministered to moms and kids, he witnessed the family devastation that comes from fatherlessness. He began to accumulate a library of books and articles and research papers all about fatherlessness and visited fatherhood programs in other communities. He essentially gave himself a master's or doctorate's program in the issue of fatherlessness. And through prayer and conversations, he eventually drew together a group of individuals who became a working committee that led to the formation of Spokane Fatherhood Initiative, or affectionately known as SPOFI.
SPO5.
Ron, welcome.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I'm pleased to be here. We are a faith-based nonprofit founded on the principle that fatherlessness is the root cause of nearly all of society's problems. By the way, Spokane, Washington is the birthplace of Father's Day. So as you heard, my interest in fatherlessness developed at a shelter for homeless women and children. I saw all these moms with multiple kids from multiple fathers most of the time. It was not the nuclear family I knew. These women were not receiving child support. The kids had behavior problems. They had little hope for the future, doing life as a single mom and supporting a family alone. So I began researching fatherlessness. Here's some data. In 1960, when I was in the third grade, the out-of-wedlock birth rate was just 5%. Just 10 years later, 1970, when I was graduating from high school, that statistic had doubled. Instead of 5%, the out-of-wedlock birth rate was 10%. It continued rising until leveling off at about 40% today. But it's actually really worse than that. The out-of-wedlock birth rate among millennials is 55%. And some people believe that only a third of all kids born today will reach their 15th birthday with a married mom and dad. Let me say that again. Only a third of all kids born today will reach their 15th birthday with a married mom and dad. So 2/3 of kids will not. Well, these social developments have had devastating consequences on kids who grow up without dads. The physical absence of fathers is now considered the most significant family and social problem facing America. Among teenagers, the rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide have increased 50 to 60% in just the last 10 years. And I believe this is due to the overwhelming sense of abandonment and rejection children feel when there is no father in their lives. So unlike the world of nuclear families that I grew up with, couples today become active sexually very quickly. They move in with one another impulsively and become pregnant outside of marriage in record numbers. So as one article put it 20 years ago, we now have sex without strings and relationships without rings. Well, how did this happen? I strongly encourage everyone watching to get a book called Endgame by John Van Epp and J.P. DeGans. That's Endgame, like the end of the game. Subtitled, The Church's Strategic Move to Save Faith and Family in America. They argue quite persuasively that our current social structure is the result of decoupling. We have decoupled sex from marriage. In other words, society used to say sex is reserved exclusively for the marriage bed. And we've also decoupled romantic partnerships from marriage. You don't need to be married to live with one another and have sex with one another today. We have friends with benefits. And lastly, we've decoupled parenting from marriage, as seen in the rise of single-parent households. This means relational security, stability, and permanence have all spiraled downward. It has bankrupted the relational health of society. So can you see what this has to do with abortion? Far too many young girls grow up today without a father, which means they've lost some important protection, and they don't have a man to model for them the kind of husband they should seek. And far too many young boys grow up without a dad to teach them about sex and dating and boundaries and responsibility and honor and integrity in relationships. So when these fatherless boys and girls connect, they're totally unprepared to be parents or partners. Abortion becomes, in their minds, an easy way out. Or if a baby does come, the father frequently splits in fear, feeling totally unprepared to be a dad. But Endgame argues that the church can be the solution by teaching relationships, and they've got an amazingly effective strategy for doing that. At the Spokane Fatherhood Initiative, we address the issue by teaching fatherhood classes. Our students are almost entirely non-custodial dads. They don't live with their kids, but they want to be more involved in the lives of their children. We also have programs to support foster families and men who re-enter society as they get out of prison. And we believe that if we can get these dads to become better fathers, their children will become better parents as well. In closing, let me share this brief testimony. Back in early August, the Spokane Fatherhood Initiative had a booth at a neighborhood festival. And I was by myself late Saturday night, and 3 teenagers walking in a straight line approached me. Turns out they were all 15. It was 2 boys and a girl. The girl standing in the middle between these 2 boys, they walk up to the table, and then she looks me in the eye and she says, "Is this where I come to get a dad? Is this where I come to get a dad?"
Oh.
Can you feel the pain of this fatherless generation in that question? Turns out her father is a drug addict with 7 kids, totally disconnected from her life. She agreed to let me pray for her. And one of the things I prayed was that God's love for her as her heavenly Father would be revealed to her. I got done praying. She says, "God doesn't love me." I said, "Why do you say that?" She says, "Because I'm gay." I said, "Well, the Bible says that every human being is created in his image. I can assure you, you're gay." So I pray for that girl every day. I pray for this generation that feels like she does, so lost and disconnected, rejected and abandoned. It's very important that we get fathers involved in the lives of their kids.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ron. And it's hard to keep from tearing up at the story that you shared with us, praying for that young lady. As you can see, folks, that abortion it's something that happens after, and there are things underneath the surface that have to be healed if we're really going to be this pro-life generation. We have to look at all the different subsets as to what leads to abortion. It's a result. It's not necessarily the cause of all the problems. But you've seen that we've started with the science, and you've seen we've started with some of the core issue of fatherlessness. And now I want to take you, we're kind of progressing. I hope you follow this, how we're doing this methodically. We're progressing. And so I'd like to introduce you now to Jacob Nels. Jacob Nels left a 16-year career as a carpenter to follow his passion for investing in the lives of people by taking a job with Justice for All. Since 2008, Jacob has been working to make abortion unthinkable, to make Jesus thinkable, and teaching others to do the same. Jacob's work to show pro-life and pro-choice people that humans matter more than divisive arguments. Through respectful dialogue, sound reasoning, and compassion, Jacob hopes to teach pro-life advocates to love their neighbors and to go and teach others to do the same. During his time as a pro-life ambassador, God has used Jacob to save many lives from abortion and to teach hundreds of pro-life people to grow in compassion and understanding for the pro-choice people that they happen to disagree with. Jacob has witnessed to thousands of people on both sides of the issue, and he's seen them cease fighting toe-to-toe and move to a place of respectful understanding for their fellow human beings. Welcome, and you are with the Equal Rights Institute.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I wanted to just talk a little bit about what happens when I tell people that I go to the sidewalk, and we call it sidewalk counseling when we try to talk people out of having an abortion. So when I tell people that, or they find out, I usually get a very interesting response, which is something like, "But you're a man. How do you do that?" And I see where they're coming from, but I think it's the wrong conclusion to come to. So what happens when someone is seeking an abortion, especially a surgical abortion, is they have a driver, and very often the driver is the father of the child. So as the woman's going into the clinic and she's getting her different tests done, and she's got paperwork she's got to fill out, this can take a very long time. They can be there for sometimes up to 4 hours before the abortion actually happens. So during that time, the man's walking out to the car and back and forth. And as a man, can be easier for me to get into a conversation with them than sometimes a lady. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's where we are in society right now. So if I'm able to get into a conversation with a man, and he comes down, and I just love what Dr. Reardon said about how if the woman just has some support or a solid support system from the father, she very often will choose not to have the abortion. And one of the things I'm shocked about is how little these couples have talked. And in talking to the men and just trying to get to know their story and where they're coming from, and I'm not in a big hurry, and just understanding them, we find out they haven't really talked, and maybe he doesn't actually want this abortion. And so, okay, now where does that lead us? And maybe he does want the abortion. And at times I've been talking to a man, and I'm going to bypass a lot of steps here. I hope that everyone here gets our course online at Equal Rights Institute, but I'm going to jump to the end for the sake of this. And what will happen is I'll be talking to him, and he'll be saying things like, I'm just not ready to be a father. I'm not, this is bad timing. And the short version of what I do is I often just agree with him. And I say, you know what? You're right. You're not ready to be a father. And I see how this is bad timing. I think you could get ready, but I see where you're coming from. There's one point that I think we probably disagree on a little bit, and I want to point that out to us and just see if maybe if we're on the same page. You're saying you're not ready to be a father, and I hear you. But I think you already are a father. What do you think about that? I just don't think you can hold this child yet. And there's a lot of steps to get to this point, but once we're here, they'll usually think about it for a minute and they'll go, yeah, I guess I am a dad. I haven't thought about it that way. Now, the next thing I can do is kind of challenge them. And this is a man-to-man challenge. Why don't you go get her? Not violent, not crazy, nothing illegal here. We don't encourage anything like that. And I want to be really clear about that, but just encourage them. Why don't you go in the clinic and ask to talk to her and come on out, and maybe you guys can just have a conversation about this, because you haven't really expressed to her how you are interested in being a father, how you're willing to step up at this point. If you had a 2-year-old right here, right now, what would you do to protect that child? And they think about it. They say, I do a lot of things. I go pretty far. And I'd say, well, what I'm going to ask you to do is really awkward, and it's difficult. And it's going to be a difficult thing for you to do, which is walk in that clinic and confidently say, I'd like to speak with the mother of this child, and be bold about it. I can challenge them to do that in a way that can be very helpful. So I just want to encourage everyone that as a man in front of an abortion clinic, you've got a lot of opportunities there to hopefully prevent some of these hurts that'll come up. I want to thank you guys so much for having me on. And if anybody's interested in our material, you can see me on the screen there at equalrightsinstitute.com. And what I haven't told you guys, I'm just going to spur this on you, and I hope this isn't a problem. We're going to offer a discount code for anybody who goes to our website and buys our course. And you and I, Sarah, we'll work that out later. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. That was wonderful. And if you guys haven't had a chance to go to equalrightsinstitute.com or see any of their videos that they have, I've watched them on YouTube. They're amazing. And it really just, you heard as Jacob was talking through this conversation that he would have with another gentleman. It is important. It is a man's issue. Did you see how he said how he's able to connect with men who are there at the clinic better than women, and yet typically men aren't the ones to go. And so maybe tonight you're out there and you're watching this webcast and you're thinking, I want to do something, I'm not sure what to do. Maybe this is something that you can do. There are a lot of things that you can do, and we're giving you a lot of resources and connecting you with a lot of different groups who have resources and different opportunities for you to get out there. Next, I would like to, sorry about that background noise. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Gary Freeman, Major League Dad. I love that name, Gary. That is awesome.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, God has allowed Gary to work and serve men in mental health, sports, the pro-life movement, and pastoral ministry for over a decade. Gary's main experience has been in the pro-life movement and serving pregnancy centers, along with bringing awareness to the role of men in dealing with crisis pregnancy situations. He's been able to work with both new and current fathers. Gary's seen the need for men to understand who they are mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and the importance of meeting those needs when transitioning into the role of being a father. He longs to see a world filled with fathers all striving to be a major league dad. Welcome, Gary.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely. I'm excited. I'm grateful for what I've already heard from all these great guys that are doing amazing work. So, just a little to kind of get, I guess, specifically into my role. So, I actually started working in a local pregnancy center as a fatherhood coordinator. So, to be able to see the men that actually came into a pregnancy center, so a pregnancy center who serve young ladies, and that's normally what it's always been kind of geared to in terms of when you think of CareNet, Heartbeat, these national organizations that support local pregnancy centers all throughout the country. So I was able to kind of bang my head on a brick wall for a little while in terms of trying to figure out these guys that came into the pregnancy center. How do we actually meet with them and coach them through what's actually happening? And one of the major findings that I had over that time frame was a lot of guys had no idea that their fatherhood pattern is what I tend to call it, and how that has actually affected their decision in what they're doing in this pregnancy center now. So what I mean by that is being able to understand, your own fatherhood, whether it's wounds, whether it's successes, if you had a great dad and all those types of things, but really talking through what that has meant in terms of that guy's life. And then now you're in this position of becoming a father, or it could be another child that you're thinking of having, and all the different things that kind of come in with that and what that looks like. Specifically within the pregnancy center setting. So I really am big on being able to understand the stressors. I would say the center that I worked in here in Raleigh, North Carolina, probably about 80 to 90% of the guys that I did see, honestly, looked like me. So they were young Black men that were actually coming in. And something that I really noticed was just the different stressors that were kind of going on. They could come meet me in my office, but then I always thought about it when they leave my office, and we could make them feel as good as possible, but they go back home to certain environments that we want to make sure that we're praying for, but that we're actually setting them up to be the influence that he needs to be in the mother of the baby's life. So understanding that there's people that are willing to walk with you. There's people that are willing to step in to help you step up. So that's one thing that I'm really big on. So it's kind of hard to, ask guys to step up if they just honestly are ignorant of what they're doing and don't know how, right? So being able to provide discipleship in that area is kind of like a sneaky way of getting to discipleship if you're dealing with a guy who is a believer, or a guy who isn't. But just being honest about what's actually going on in his life at the moment. So doing that in the pregnancy center, was able to do that locally for about 2.5 years, and God just blessed tremendously, and then was able to move into a national position with CareNet, which is a national organization that oversees about 1,100 pregnancy centers throughout the country. So being able to train and serve pregnancy centers to be able to actually serve and do it in a sustainable manner of how they can actually serve the guys that actually come through their doors, and how do you actually get guys to come into those doors. So even after that season now, like I currently said, I started this nonprofit called Major League Dad. I specifically serve in the area where I live here in Raleigh, North Carolina. But what I've started to do is just develop just different trainings for pregnancy centers specifically. in terms of how do you train the volunteer guy? Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? I remember when I first started in the local center, we're sitting at the devotion table in the morning, and there's 8 people, and I'm the only guy. And that can be kind of, interesting, for the lack of a better word, just in terms of how you feel. So what does that mean for the female client advocates that are working, and now you have these guys in here, and like, what does that look like, and what does that feel like? What do you actually do? The paperwork that's involved, all the HIPAA stuff and all that. So that's something that I've really love. I really love to actually jump into with pregnancy centers specifically, but actually also speaking to churches and just this awareness of guys that we have something to do other than to just kind of write checks towards things. We can actually get involved and kind of help walk with guys who need us to step in to help them step up. So that's something that I feel like is really key. And what we try to offer through Major League Dad, those are things that the trainings and all that kind of stuff, would love to just be able to offer that in any way possible. You can just go to the website and contact me, and that's something that I'm really key on doing. So thank you for having me. And hopefully that as we've gone through this, like I said, we've heard a lot of good stuff already. So just want to be a part of God's kingdom plan and being able to serve and see his design, the family unit, be able to prosper. So thank you.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. And I love what you said. You are all about stepping in so that you can help guys step up. I love it. That's exactly it. And I hope all of you who are watching this webcast are see the pattern that we're going through, the progression that we're going through. And now we're on that point where we're talking about the gentlemen who are going to the pregnancy resource centers. So they have chosen to keep the baby, but they're coming in and not knowing exactly what to do to support the mother of their child, or the mother of the baby. Maybe it's not their child, but these are all things that need to happen in order for us to really get rid of abortion in our society. It goes much deeper. And so again, just progressing on this this journey that we're on tonight, talking about mentoring men to be fathers. So there are many resources, and we are going to present another resource to you. I'd like to introduce Mark Morton. Mark Morton and his wife, Josephine, are maternity house parents for Life Services and the My Choice Center. Mark serves as the fatherhood director for these organizations. Adoption has been a significant part of he and his wife's lives and a palpable link to the mission of My Choice. They made the decision to adopt 3 little girls in foster care and have worked in ministry with at-risk youth and adults for most of their careers and have always made it a family endeavor. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us. And you are with Life Services, and your website is lifeservices.org.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. This has been really good. Speaking of Major League Dads, I'm kind of a rookie because this is our first year doing fatherhood, and so we are learning as we go, but it's been a great adventure. Just to give you an idea of what we do with fatherhood, our focus is on our My Choice clinic, and we see probably 1,500 people a year in the clinic. We also have a mobile clinic that's out in the city, and then the maternity home. I'm part of that as well. And our goal is really to connect with the mother of the baby and the father of the baby, and we move them towards mentor relationships. And as I've already heard, there are significant challenges. Oftentimes, the men that come to our clinic won't even go inside. They'll stay out in the parking lot in their car. And as I engage them, oftentimes what we find is that they feel uninvolved in the pregnancy decisions. Oftentimes they feel like they have no say. It's up to the mother of the baby. And so we're really looking towards getting them more involved and activated. And I'm hearing that through all the conversations that we've talked about so far. The reason we're using a mentor model, I think it's been mentioned before, is that when there is that network of support around the mother of the baby, statistically it goes up way higher that they choose choose to have the baby and choose life. And so we try to do that through a mentoring process. We train mentors. We have a group of men that do that. What we find is that we're trying to build this idea of commitments and character in these young men, often mostly young men. And what we find is because oftentimes they don't have meaningful or strong commitments in their life, often they haven't had a positive father figure, and often they come from fractured or dysfunctional families. And so we try to build on the idea of commitments that define us and build character, and character is really the building blocks of understanding who you are. So the first thing we do in the mentoring process is try to build on who am I, and then we talk about community. We try to build a positive community, as a lot of us know that, you know, homelessness, one of the primary reasons for homelessness is lack of community. And so we try to we connect them with a mentor. We meet monthly with their mentor and mentee, and then they also meet together at least once a week outside of that. And so we try to surround them with a positive community that can help them move towards making better decisions. A lot of times in the maternity house, we will interview young ladies and that are interested in living in the maternity house, and we'll get to the end of the interview and they'll say, well, what's next? And we'll say, well, you know, let's take some time to think about this, pray about this, and then we'll reconnect. And, you know, the last one that I participated in, the young lady said, well, you know, my family doesn't want to help me. My boyfriend's in jail, you know, and went through this list of lack of community. And so she said, basically, the decision is me, myself, and my baby. And so a lot of times when you don't have that community around you, you're put in the position of making very difficult decisions, hard decisions. So we try to build a positive community around them. And then the last part is really just the idea of being teachable. And it's really the last part, because I do feel like if you start to understand who you are and you have a strong community around you, you can understand the idea of being teachable and learning new things and growing in who you are. So that's kind of the strategy we use with mentoring. And, you know, we're talking with guys all the time, every day. And I love what I've heard so far, because great information and great challenges for me personally in that type of work.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. What a great system. What a great mentoring system that you guys have set up, and 1,500 people to come into your clinics every year. And I'm sure it's going to just increase from here on out. But that's such a great system that you have set up, and it's a great way that somebody else can duplicate it elsewhere and all throughout the country, right? And that's what we need. We need these systems all throughout the country in order to help heal a man's heart, and heal a woman's heart, and heal our nation from abortion. And as we are moving along, because we still have a couple of other great speakers for you, I would like to introduce you to Jack Harper. And Jack Harper is a pastor, and he's also the vice president and men's director for Save One. He's fought in this battle for the unborn since the inception of Save One in 2000. Jack has supported Save One as a board member, a liaison to the global church, a travel partner, and through financial support. In 2018, God very clearly spoke to Jack and Sheila, his wife, about coming together, and Jack joining the full-time ministry for the staff of Save One. In 2003, Jack was called to full-time ministry. In 2007, became a church planner, and he's pastored Crossroads Church for 11 years until God called him away to Save One. Not really called away, just to something slightly different. He's also the author of several books. Thank you so much, Jack, for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And what you guys are doing here is incredible Sheila and I have always loved the very brave and great work that happens in the pregnancy centers and the counseling and the work that they do to save lives, save babies. And then Jacob, what you do on the sidewalk there, we know that is brave work as well. And we have always loved that. But what you guys have done here is you've also partnered some of these ministries and like Ron with the fatherless and the impact of not having fathers in the homes. And then Gary, I've met him at CareNet in Orlando a couple of years ago. He's an incredible speaker, and I love what he's doing with Major League Dads. And then this life services, Mark, what you're doing in mentoring, those things are absolutely needed. Our ministry is a little bit different from what you guys are doing, and this is something that's, as we all know, the great work that happens before people go into the clinic, and then even some coming back out of there. I love that, but there are many that have made it out the back door, and they walk into this aftermath of abortion that they had no idea that they were about to get into. And so what we do is we help men, women, and families recover from the aftermath of abortion. And specifically, I'm here to talk about men, and we love doing that because men need to be invited back into this conversation. For years, they were conditioned to think that they couldn't have a voice or shouldn't speak up. They should just sit back and be quiet about it because of their gender for no other reason, which is ridiculous. We are not a barbaric society. We know that men grieve the loss of children. And so what we want to do is help those men recover from that aftermath. So when they come to us, as Dr. Reardon talked about very clearly, there are alcohol and substance abuse that is a big part of their lives when they come at this point after the abortion and dealing with the aftermath of that. There's grief, there's shame, there's sorrow, there is guilt, there is depression. And what we want to help them do is walk out of that. We do that very, very simply by a Bible study. And that Bible study is geared to walk them out of that place of hurt into a place of hope, and to find that, that victory song that every one of us have because of who God has created us to be. What happens when men experience the abortion, whether they, and Dr. Reardon talked about this, whether they chose to be involved in the abortion, whether they never knew about the child and were told afterwards, they have been stripped of fatherhood. They have been stripped from who it is that God has created them to be. And so what we want to do is help them take that rightful place back in the kingdom. And we do that in about a 10 to 12 week Bible study. This is the Save One Men study I have here. My wife and I co-wrote that. All of this ministry came from an abortion that my wife had in 1985, and for 7 years she lived unhinged. She experienced the grief and the guilt, and she walked out this process of trying to numb herself through drugs and alcohol and a lot of different things. And then finally, she heard a radio ad from a pregnancy center. So thank you for pregnancy centers and what you guys do. That simply said, if you're suffering after an abortion, we have a class for you. And so she went. It took a little bit, but she took that class and she found her healing. And we have not been able to be quiet about this since. We will not let someone go unaware that they are walking into something far different than just not being pregnant. What they are walking into is a lifetime of tough roads ahead, and we want to help them to a lot of people will say, hey, you guys, wow, shouldn't you be working to keep the babies from being aborted? Well, yes, that's what we're doing, because what we want people to do is to know the truth about what abortion does and what it does to you. And it's not just being unpregnant. And that truth gives them the ability to make the right decision. So, it's not the focus of our ministry, but over and over and over, we get people that contact us and say, hey, will you talk to this person? they're considering an abortion, and we want them to understand what it is that they're about to enter into. So we've been around since 2000. This is our 21st year of doing this. And we have just literally been with tens and tens and tens of thousands of people in this process to find their healing and that journey back to freedom. And we are overwhelmed by what God is doing and opening doors. What started out as a Bible study at our church is now over 330 chapters in 26 different nations around the world. And our books have been translated into 21 different languages. So, we know it's a U.S. problem, but it's also a worldwide, global problem. And we're fighting it everywhere we find an open door.
Yeah. Oh, that is so good. Thank you so much, Jack. And thank you for what you and Sheila and everyone that works with Save One is doing all across the world. And, I hope you guys have heard that abortion, it can be avoided. And one of the things that we talked about in our very first webcast that we did was that most of the abortions that happen through women who've already had one. And so when we work to heal women and men after the abortion, that means that they're less likely to have another one, right? And then when they're healed, they can go and help someone else and stop them from making that choice, because abortion doesn't solve a problem. Instead, it creates a lifetime of problems. And we're seeing the consequences of that in many different ways. Thank you so much to every single one of our speakers tonight. And we have two more wonderful, wonderful men who happen to be Washington State clergy members. And one of the things I want you guys to think about is many women feel, and even men, don't feel like they can go and talk to their pastor, their bishop, their church leader about the abortion they had or maybe that they're going to have. And I hope after hearing from Bishop Thomas Daly and Pastor John Repsol that you will change your mind.
I'm Bishop Tom Daly from the Diocese of Spokane here in Eastern Washington, and I thank those of you who are part of the Human Life of Washington for this time to speak to you. Just a few basic messages. In John's Gospel, we know there is the account of the woman caught in adultery. A closer reading of this passage, we see that the Pharisees brought the woman into their midst as a prop. We're told that she's full of shame and is in fear for her life, with probably feelings of anger and despair, disappointment, and a profound sense of loneliness. I think the feelings of the woman in the gospel must be like a young woman caught in a crisis situation during a pregnancy. Oftentimes she feels overwhelmed, alone, afraid, confused, rejected. We must never allow the pro-life movement to be perceived as a bunch of angry, self-righteous Pharisees or hypocrites with stones in hands looking to judge. We want a woman to experience the merciful love of God as seen in our efforts. Jesus, notice, does not condone the woman's sin, but nor does he condemn her. But rather he invites her to a new start, to know that she's forgiven and loved. So essential is the message of Pope Francis about being with people. As he has said, it's not that Catholics or anybody falls and stays there, but rather gets back up again, knowing of God's love. Regardless of anybody's religious affiliation, we have the Sisters of Life, a community of religious women who help build a culture of life by compassionate care of a woman in need. We also have, for those who have had an abortion, Project Rachel, many other pro-life ministries that take place. It's so important for us to help build a culture of life, but to do so with compassion, with understanding, with generosity of heart. We're called to be a pro-life people. But to be a pro-life people, we must also be about saving mothers. And we need to focus on the women and try to understand their suffering. We know that we must care for the unborn. We must care for the expectant mother. But it's important for us to keep in mind the men. Studies show that if a man is supportive of the woman who is pregnant, very often the mother chooses life. So we want men to step up with courage and responsibility and know that they have an important role to play, not just during the 9 months of pregnancy, but to follow afterwards. And we have in our diocese and the dioceses of the state, Yakima and Seattle, a program called Prepares. We're called to be a people of compassion, of charity, and for outreach. And it's very important for all of us to do so with love in our hearts. I thank the Human Life of Washington for your work, for your efforts, and I want you to know of my prayers that together Christian charity demands that we love the child, the mother, the father, and we help all of them to live a healthy life. Let us generously provide for their needs. Let us do so in prayer, but above all, a heartfelt compassion to help build a culture of life. God bless you.
Good evening, friends. My name is John Repsold, and I've been pastoring here in Spokane for the past 28 years. I want to thank you for being a part of this very important event. Rarely has our nation needed more than it does now, that humble, strong servant leadership of men who are dedicated to laying down their lives for the lives of others who are facing unplanned crises. Let me begin with a short story, if I may. In 1904, a young man named William Borden felt called to be a missionary. Though he came from a very wealthy Borden family, he did not allow wealth to possess him. A close friend who knew of his passionate commitment to missions warned him that he was throwing his life away by becoming a missionary. But Borden persisted. He wrote in his Bible as a college student at that point these two words, "No reserves." After he graduated from Yale, he was offered numerous very lucrative positions, but he refused them all. It was at that point that he penned two more words, "No retreats," in the back of his Bible. And eventually his missionary call narrowed to an Arabic-speaking group in China. After he did graduate work at Princeton Seminary, he left for Egypt to study Arabic before going to China. Just months into Egypt, Borden contracted spinal meningitis and tragically passed away at 25. Just before his death, under the other two notations that he had made in his Bible, he wrote his final testament, "No regrets." Roughly a century later, I officiated the funeral of a young Army sergeant in our church here in Spokane who'd been killed in the Iraq War in 2008. He had taken Borden's 6-word life motto as his own, and it had propelled him into a life that, though just 26 years long, was full, meaningful, and served as a much-needed role model for hundreds of men. Life often takes us in unexpected and challenging directions, almost always inviting us into sacrifice. Unfortunately, men today are frequently told, "You can't do it." They're told that they're too young to be fathers, too immature to take responsibility, too broken to raise a child or support their child's mother, or simply told it's none of their concern, that they shouldn't be involved anyway. This mirrors the lies told to women when society tells them that they can't succeed and have a child, or their dreams will be crushed if they carry a pregnancy to term, or that they can't be good mothers. Sadly, if men and women are convinced by these lies and have abortions, they're told further lies, lies that falsely claim that they can't be healed or forgiven. As Christians, we're called to share the good news. The good news is the gospel of hope. We're called to tell men the truth, that they can step up. There's no shame in making mistakes or bad decisions. There's only shame in knowingly refusing to try and do better. If we strive to humbly and charitably help those who are in need, if we do not hold back our help out of fear or retreat from assisting others because it's challenging and costly, then we will live lives of service that have no regrets. In this caring for people, we'll help them become caring people. God bless every one of you tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Bishop Daly and Pastor Repsold. Wonderful messages, and I hope you guys are hearing the heart of so many in the church that wants to help, and we need to help. And in closing, our final speaker, we have a very special message from our executive director, Esther Ripplinger.
Wow. Well, I hope you'll join me in just thanking our amazing presenters for sharing their time and talent and energy with us. I know that it means so much to all of us that you chose to spend your time with us and to learn about this very important topic and how to apply it. We will be putting this recording on our website as well as the websites of our presenters. We hope that you will engage with them and reach out and also share their message going forward. So because we're all here for each other, and that's the beauty of the pro-life movement. We're not in competition. We are one powerful voice uniting for life. And this, because we need each other, it all works together. And it's a beautiful thing for everyone to come together with this common cause to defend human life from conception to natural death. So thank you for that. So now I have an announcement. Thank you for being patient. It's exciting. We are so honored by the support of a few donors who pulled together their resources together to make it possible for us tonight to offer this matching gift challenge in the amount of $12,500. It's an exciting new way to help more people to, just like you, to participate in our mission. And this is an exciting time. So tonight, your $5 becomes $10. Now, every heart and partner with us is very heartfelt and precious to us. And every amount is just very meaningful to us personally. So $5 is an amount that tells us that, hey, I'm in, let's do this together, and we come alongside you and we put a game plan together, and we would like to do that for you. So give us a call, and we want to, how can we help and serve you to effect change and change hearts, and you have a desire to change hearts and save lives in your community, and so we would love to help you do that, so to equip you, etc. So your $10 actually becomes $20, and tonight your $20 becomes $40. So we are looking for stakeholders to partner with us. And if you've never given before, or maybe it's been a long time, and that's okay, just remember that we are a grassroots organization, and we started in 1971, and this is our 50th year anniversary. And we are not exactly, we are so excited about that because the heart of our organization is you, just people like you. We are not funded by any government grants or private grants or corporation dollars, but really just funded by people like you with $5 on up. And so it all works together, and we're just happy. We're serving you to equip you, and that's a wonderful partnership. So keep in mind that Human Life of Washington is often the first point of contact for anyone wanting to become involved in the pro-life community, and we'll talk with them on the phone, and if they need healing, we will see to it that they have immediate support. And that is also just understanding where they're at. We have people on staff here who understand and can walk them through that and make sure that they're in other safe hands for those ministries like SaveOne.org that we have been promoting tonight as well. And also, if they are volunteer ready, then we will train them in best practices. And just it makes our whole movement stronger when we are equipped. And that's what we're here to do. Now, this is our second online webcast. And we plan to produce more of these where we can go in further detail with number of these ministries, just like you saw tonight. And so when we highlight those ministries, you also can support them in your communities. And that's very important. So also that just helps us all in our understanding, especially because these people are hone their craft, and we can glean from their experience. They do this full time, and we can just take that out to our communities to make a difference. So please, if you have not subscribed yet to our email newsletters or YouTube channel, find out how to do that. There it is right there. Thank you, Michael. So we have the opportunity tonight, this matching gift challenge of $12,500. I'm so honored. Again, like I said, we're just so honored. This honors our donors because they believe in us, but they also believe in you, that you will do what you can. And it's an incentive to expand our mission, and it's mission critical, and you are part of it. So it's a really exciting time. I want to invite you to that even your $100, if you're able to, will become $200 tonight, up to that $12,500 mark. And without your support, it would not be possible for us to provide networking and training, support and signal boosting to these amazing ministries and more that we have not touched yet. And we put these on our website for you for resources. So nor would it be possible for us to share our message of healing and compassion with those who we serve directly, as I mentioned on the phone when we're talking different ones. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. You can, underneath the event page, there's a button for donate, and also on our website on the far right, donate button. So that's convenient for you. But just leave you with these three thoughts before we end. If you don't feel that you can get involved at a direct level, just please know that you don't need to be on the front lines in order to make an impact. You can check out our website, and you'll find the resources there in your community to be prepared and to let people know. And you can be that resource, that walking billboard for these ministries that need your help. And there may be somebody in your life who may need your help, and you'll be ready. So that's good. Also, just sending a kind word of support to any of these ministries and tell them what you thought about tonight's presentation. That really goes a long way. That will make a huge difference. They want to hear from you and their feedback. And that's just part of building our community. So thank you. So to wrap things up, to wrap up our wonderful evening together, just please share this video with as many people as possible, and to expose them to these wonderful resources that you now have. So thank you again. Just together we're making a difference. Together we are one powerful voice, uniting for life, just as I always say. So God bless you, and thank you, and good night.
Thank you.